Why was her name missing from the list? That's what she kept asking herself as the briefing began. A whiteboard full of names, call signs, objectives, men and women she had bled beside, and hers absent. Captain Elena Markov stood in the shadows at the edge of the hangar, boots rooted on cold steel, listening as if she didn't belong. No one looked at her. No one called her forward. She wasn't invited to the table. But she knew something the others didn't. The mission unfolding on that board, the coordinates, the schedule, it wasn't the whole story. She could see the gap. She could feel the lie humming beneath the fluorescent lights. And maybe that was why they didn't write her name, because if she spoke, if she told them what she carried, it could unravel everything. Her heart thudded once, twice. She adjusted the strap on her gear, silent, unnoticed. The commander cleared his throat. Extraction window 0600. No delays, you miss it, you stay behind. The room went still. Soldiers nodded. A few scribbled notes. Someone cracked a nervous joke about coffee. The sound echoed too loud, breaking the tension, then quickly faded into silence again. And Elena, she just breathed, slow, quiet, measured. Because she wasn't supposed to be here. She should have been gone months ago, discharged, off the roster, a ghost fading into civilian anonymity. That was the plan. But then came the file, the message. The photograph slipped into her hands by someone she trusted once long ago. And the truth it carried, truth heavy enough to shatter chains of command, to rip open scars, to condemn or save, had led her here. One last mission, one last chance. The hangar doors rumbled as they opened. Night air rushed in cold, sharp, carrying the scent of oil and rain. Engines growled in the distance. Helicopters waiting. Still, no one looked at her. She almost smiled at that. The forgotten soldier, the shadow at the edge of the map. And yet in a few hours she'd walk into fire beside them. They didn't know it yet, but she'd be there because she had to. She turned, slipping away before eyes could find her. Every step felt like walking through glass. Her pulse carried a steady rhythm. Don't falter, don't break, don't speak. Not yet. Outside, the rain began. Thin drops ticking against her jacket, soaking into fabric, chilling her shoulders. The sky was a bruised canvas. Perfect weather for a mission no one wanted to name out loud. She lit a cigarette she didn't need. The flame flickered, small against the dark. She hadn't smoked in years, but tonight wasn't about health. Tonight was about silence, about filling the space where words didn't fit. Her hands shook once. She clenched them still. The truth. It pressed against her chest, a locked box she couldn't set down. And every mile they flew, every bullet they spent, every breath they risked, it would all lead to the moment she'd have to open it. And then, would they hate her? Would they forgive her? Would they ever understand? She crushed the cigarette beneath her boot and walked toward the waiting birds. The rotors screamed against the storm. She climbed aboard last, settling into the corner where shadows lived. The others didn't question her. Maybe they thought she was late edition backup. Maybe they didn't care. In war, faces came and went too fast to remember. She studied them, one by one. Ramirez, fiddling with a small photo of his daughter, tucking it into his vest like a shield. Jensen chewing gum too fast, too loud, the way he always did when fear pressed down. Hatted calm, eyes closed, lips moving in a silent prayer no one interrupted. And the youngest, Cooper, barely 20, freckles still soft on his cheeks. He caught Elena's gaze for half a second, then looked away quick, embarrassed. She almost smiled. Almost. Each of them carried something invisible. Regrets, promises, ghosts. She could see it in their posture, in the way their hands gripped weapons not yet fired, and she wondered if they could see hers. The helicopter lifted, blades carving through wind. The city fell away beneath them, swallowed by night. No words, just engine roar, headset static, and the quiet rhythm of breath inside armor. Elena closed her eyes. She saw her brother's face. Pale, silent. 15 years old the last time she saw him alive, a memory like a blade hidden under layers of time and denial. And now, after all these years, the file in her pack told a different story. He hadn't died the way they told her. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't random. It was connected to this mission, to this place, to the people she was flying toward. That was the truth she carried. She opened her eyes, steady again. The pilot's voice broke the static, 2 minutes out. Rain hammered harder, smearing against glass, shivering across metal. Lights flickered in the distance, compound walls, guard towers, a place built for secrets. Her fingers tightened around her rifle. One last mission, one last chance. And tonight, either she would find the proof she needed, or she would never leave this ground alive. Why did her hands feel heavier than the rifle itself? Elena adjusted her grip, knuckles pale beneath leather gloves, as the helicopter dipped lower into the storm. Every vibration rattled through her bones. Every gust of rain blurred the world beyond the glass. But it wasn't the weather that weighed her down. It was the secret, the truth she hadn't told them, the file she carried pressed flat against her chest inside a waterproof pouch, a truth that could break the trust of every soldier sitting beside her. She closed her eyes for a beat. She could hear them breathing through the headsets, steady, practiced, human. Each sound reminded her of what was at stake. If she spoke too soon, it could divide them before they ever touched the ground. And in war, division killed faster than bullets. She didn't speak, not yet. The pilot's voice cut through, 1 minute. The cabin stiffened, weapons checked, safety clicks, boots shifted, eyes hardened. No one needed orders now, ritual carried them through. Ramirez kissed the photo of his daughter before sliding it back into his vest. Haddad tapped his forehead once, finishing his prayer. Cooper tried to mask the tremor in his hands by scratching his helmet strap, failing. And Elena, she breathed, deep, controlled. She had taught herself that trick in sniper school. When fear rose, breathe until the rifle and the heart moved as one. The helicopter jolted, the wheels hit mud, the doors slid open. Go, go, go. They spilled into the storm. Boots sank into waterlogged soil. The compound loomed ahead, concrete walls black against the night, searchlights cutting sharp arcs through the rain. Elena landed last, rifle raised, her body folding into motion with them. Her steps were silent, her breath measured. Her eyes swept corners the others didn't see. Years of solitude had made her sharper than most, invisible but sharp. They moved along a ditch, crouched low, the storm covering their advance. Every flash of lightning painted them white for a heartbeat, then vanished into shadow. Jensen muttered through comms, "Feels too quiet." It did, Elena felt it too. No guards on the perimeter, no patrols, only empty towers, lights turning by themselves. Eyes open, the commander whispered, "This is wrong." They pressed forward anyway. Orders were orders. At the breach point, Cooper fumbled with the cutter, nerves making his hands shake. Elena slid beside him, steadying his wrist with a light touch. His eyes flicked up to hers. No words, just a nod, and the metal gave way. They slipped inside. The compound was a skeleton of silence, empty corridors, rain dripping through broken vents. Every footstep echoed too loud. "What the hell is this place?" Ramirez muttered. Elena didn't answer. She already knew. She'd seen the photograph. She'd read the notes in that file. This was where the truth lived or died. Her chest tightened as they reached the first chamber. Rusted doors opened to rows of abandoned bunks, blankets still folded, boots left at attention, as if soldiers had vanished mid-breath. The air smelled of dust, oil, and something metallic beneath. Cooper whispered, "Where is everybody?" No one spoke. The silence itself was answer enough. Then, a sound. Not loud, not clear, but there, somewhere deeper in the compound, a shuffle, a scrape, a breath too human to be the storm. The commander raised a fist. "Halt." every weapon lifted. Elena's heart hammered once, because she knew. Before they saw, before they turned the next corner, she knew. Her brother's face burned in her memory, 15 years old, smiling once, then gone, officially dead, buried in a grave she never believed. And now here, this place, this silence. She gripped her rifle tighter. The team moved forward in silence. Every step was glass about to shatter. The chamber opened into a larger hall lined with steel doors, cells. The sound came again, a cough weak, human. "Contact," Jensen whispered. But Elena shook her head, barely moving her lips. "Not hostile." The commander glanced back at her, confused. Since when did she have authority here? Since when did she speak? But before anyone could question, the door at the far end groaned. Hinges old but forced. A figure staggered out, thin, wrapped in rags, hands bound, eyes wide with terror at the sight of soldiers. A prisoner. The squad froze. Ramirez cursed under his breath. What the hell? The figure collapsed to his knees, coughing blood into the wet floor. Elena stepped forward before the others could. She ripped off her glove, pressed her bare hand to the prisoner's shoulder. The skin was hot, fevered. His eyes met hers, and in broken English he whispered one word. "Why now?" It wasn't accusation, it was despair. Elena's throat burned. She almost spoke the truth, almost ripped the file from her chest and threw it into the rain-soaked floor, but she didn't. Instead, she lifted her rifle again, face set to stone. "Secure him," the commander ordered. Haddad pulled the prisoner up. Chains clinked. The man groaned, half dead but alive enough to walk. The squad moved deeper. More cells, more figures, dozens, thin, hollow-eyed, shackled, some too weak to stand, others already silent forever. It wasn't a compound. It was a graveyard that hadn't finished its work. Ramirez muttered prayers under his breath. Jensen gagged at the smell. Cooper's freckles had gone pale, eyes wide with horror. And Elena, she walked among them with a weight no one else carried, because she recognized faces, not all but some. Files she had seen, photographs she'd memorized, people listed as lost, missing, unrecoverable. They were here, they had been here for years. And somewhere among them, her brother's name whispered against her ribs. She bit down hard on the inside of her cheek, blood filling her mouth. She didn't speak, not yet. The commander's voice was flat, empty of emotion. "We weren't briefed on this." And Elena thought, no, you weren't supposed to be. Because the truth wasn't meant for them, it was meant for her. Lightning cracked outside, the storm shook the walls, and in that flash of white she saw the prisoner's eyes again. That question, that despair. Why now? She didn't have an answer. Not yet. But she knew one thing. This mission wasn't about weapons or coordinates anymore. It wasn't even about survival. It was about the truth she carried, and whether she had the strength to tell it. Before it killed them all. Why was no one asking the question that burned in her chest? The cells stretched on like a labyrinth of misery, rows of iron, broken locks, faces pressed against the dark. And yet not one of her team said what lingered in every glance. Who had built this place? Who had left these people to rot? The commander's jaw tightened. He was a man trained to keep emotion buried, but his silence carried more than orders. He didn't like this. He didn't trust it. And yet, like every soldier, he moved forward, because momentum was safer than doubt. Elena trailed close, rifle raised, her senses sharpened by something deeper than training. She could feel the truth pressing closer, pounding against the edges of her restraint. She wanted to shout it, to tear off the mask, to tell them why this mission was wrong, why she shouldn't even be here. But silence once again became her shield. The prisoner stumbled, coughing blood, dragging chains behind him as Haddad tried to hold him steady. "He won't last long," Haddad muttered. The commander gave a terse nod. "Keep him alive, he's evidence." Evidence. The word twisted in Elena's gut. That man wasn't evidence. He was a survivor. And the way his fevered eyes had found hers, as if he knew something about her presence here, clawed at her resolve. They pressed deeper. Lights flickered overhead, powered by a dying generator. The hum echoed against wet stone. Ramirez whispered, "This wasn't supposed to be part of the op." "No," the commander admitted, "but we don't get to decide what's on the ground." Silence again, boots on concrete, weapons at the ready. And Elena, her mind spiraled to a night years ago. A knock on her family's door. A folded flag in a stranger's hands. A voice saying, "We regret to inform you." Her brother's death notice. A lie she had swallowed because she had no strength to do otherwise. Until the file appeared. Until the photographs told her he hadn't died on that road at all. Until the whispers of this compound. And now here she was. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. Her hands ached from gripping the rifle too long, but letting go would mean falling apart. The squad reached a sealed blast door at the end of the hall. Unlike the rusted cells, this one was pristine, reinforced, humming with power. The commander gestured, "Jensen, breach kit." Jensen crouched, pulling tools, sweat running through the grime on his temple. "This isn't standard lock work. Someone wanted this sealed." "Can you get through?" A pause. "Yeah, but it'll take a minute." "Do it." They formed a perimeter, rifles trained on the darkness. Elena stood near Cooper, who fidgeted with his magazine like a nervous habit. His breathing was shallow, fast. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low. He jumped at the sound of her words. He hadn't expected her to speak. "Why, yeah, just, first time seeing something like this." She studied him, young, too young. She wondered what face waited for him back home. A mother, a girl, maybe no one. Maybe he had only the uniform like she once did. "It never gets easier," she said softly. He glanced at her, startled by the weight in her voice. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't. Soldiers learned when to silence curiosity. The breach kit beeped once, the door clicked. And the world seemed to hold its breath. The commander raised his hand. 3 fingers, 2, 1. The door groaned open. A wave of heat poured out, thick and suffocating, and with it, a stench. Not just decay, not just rot, something sharper, chemical, unnatural. The squad recoiled instinctively. Inside, lights flickered to reveal rows of steel tables, restraints bolted to them, instruments scattered, surgical, violent. And along the walls, screens still alive with faint glow, running data no one could immediately understand. Cooper gagged. Ramirez swore. Haddad muttered another prayer under his breath. The commander's face hardened, unreadable. Elena stepped in first. Her boots splashed against something on the floor. She didn't want to look down, but her eyes betrayed her. A dark stain, old, human. Her lungs locked. The file in her chest burned like fire. She had seen images, blurred, classified, denied by those in power. Now the evidence lay before her, undeniable. The truth. Her brother hadn't died, he had been taken. And this was where they brought him. "Elena." She froze. The commander's voice was sharp. He never used her name. "You recognize this, don't you?" His eyes locked on hers, cold, searching. The others glanced between them, confusion sparking. Her throat closed. If she spoke, everything would spill. The prisoner coughed again from the hallway, a sound like final breaths. And in that moment, the silence shattered. Jensen shouted, "Movement, contact, east wing." Gunfire cracked through the storm, bullets tearing into walls. The squad dove for cover, instincts snapping back into place. Elena hit the ground, rifle up, adrenaline drowning thought. Figures in the shadows, armed, fast, ruthless. Whoever had abandoned this place hadn't left it unguarded. The room exploded into chaos. Ramirez fired steady bursts. Haddad dragged the prisoner to cover. Jensen cursed as rounds ricocheted. Cooper froze for a heartbeat too long until Elena yanked him down by his vest, forcing his rifle up. "Shoot, damn it," she hissed. His weapon barked, muzzle flash lighting his terrified face. The storm outside raged louder, mixing with the storm inside. Concrete shattered. Sparks rained. The compound that had held secrets for years now roared with violence. And through it all, Elena's pulse was steady. Her truth burned louder than the bullets. Every target she dropped was a step closer. Every breath she took was borrowed time. Because she knew what the others didn't. Somewhere beyond this firefight, beyond the screams and the smoke, was the answer she had chased for years. Her brother's face. Or his ghost. And either way, this mission would break her. How long had the firefight lasted? Seconds, minutes, time lost its shape in the roar of gunfire. When silence finally fell, it wasn't relief that filled the air. It was dread. Smoke curled through the compound corridors. Brass casings clinked as they settled into puddles. The storm outside still raged, but inside, only breath. Heavy, ragged, uneven. Ramirez leaned against the wall, blood seeping through his sleeve. Not life-threatening, but deep enough to sting. Jensen cursed softly, reloading though no enemies remained. Haddad whispered prayers as he checked the prisoner's pulse, shaking his head at the fever climbing higher. And Cooper. He sat slumped against the doorframe, chest heaving, freckles wet with tears he didn't know he shed. His rifle still trembled in his grip, smoke trailing from the barrel. Elena crouched beside him. Her own pulse still thundered, but her face was calm. She rested a gloved hand on his forearm. "You did what you had to." His eyes darted to hers, wide, searching for something, absolution maybe. I froze. "No," she said firmly. "You fired, you're still here, that's what matters." He swallowed, trying to believe her. But she knew the truth. No one left a first kill untouched. It carved something permanent. And she saw it now, etched into him. Another soul carrying a weight that never left. The commander's voice cut sharp across the silence. "Check bodies, collect intel, we move in 5. His tone was too controlled, like he was speaking through his teeth, and his eyes still on her longer than they should have been. Suspicion had roots now. Elena rose, wiping grime from her cheek with the back of her hand. She forced her rifle to rest easy against her chest, though every nerve screamed for her to move, to run, to tear through the rest of this place until she found what she came for. But she couldn't, not yet. Not with eyes watching. Jensen kicked one of the fallen attackers, flipping the body over. "Local militia," he muttered. "Not standard army, paid guns." "Paid by who?" Ramirez asked, pressing a bandage to his arm. No one answered. Because the real answer was too dangerous. Elena knew. The file told her. This wasn't random. Someone had been guarding the compound, not abandoning it. Someone had known the truth was buried here and wanted it to stay that way. The commander's radio crackled. Static. Then a voice distorted, barely audible. "Status report." He pressed the receiver. "We've engaged hostiles, area compromised, continuing sweep." Static again. The line went dead. Elena's skin prickled. The extraction window, the promise of evac at dawn, would it hold now that the mission had veered off script? She didn't trust it. The prisoner moaned, weak, clutching at Haddad's sleeve. His lips moved, forming sounds too broken to be words. Elena leaned closer, straining to catch them. It wasn't English, not fully, but she understood pieces. "Brother still inside." Her blood ran cold. She froze, every muscle locked, as if the words were knives pressed against her throat. "Brother." The commander's gaze snapped to her. He had heard it too, and in his eyes questions sharpened into accusation. "Elena," he said slowly, dangerously, "you know something." The squad's heads turned, Cooper's wide eyes, Ramirez's narrowed suspicion. Jensen's scowl, even-handed, usually a wall of calm, glanced at her with doubt. She felt their stares like weight on her chest. Her secret trembled at the edge of revelation. But if she spoke now, what would it do? Would they follow her deeper into this graveyard for the sake of one soldier long believed dead? Or would they brand her compromised, emotional, a liability? She steadied her breath. He's delirious, fever talking. The commander didn't blink. He didn't believe her. But he didn't call her out, not yet. Instead, he turned to the squad. Pack up, we move, there's more here. They obeyed, but tension hung heavy. Invisible cracks forming, waiting for the right pressure to split them apart. Elena tightened the strap of her rifle, jaw clenched. She had bought herself a few more minutes, but the clock was ticking. They pushed deeper into the compound. Corridors narrower now, walls sweating moisture, air thick with the smell of rust and chemicals. Each step echoed like footsteps into a tomb. Jensen muttered, "This place feels alive." Ramirez snorted, "Feels dead if you ask me." But Elena knew the truth. Both were right. Every wall whispered of lives stolen. Every flicker of light hummed with unfinished screams. And somewhere, buried in the marrow of this place, was her brother's ghost, or his voice, still waiting. Her chest tightened with each step. Memories flashed unbidden. A boy's laughter echoing in a kitchen, the slam of a car door on the night he never came home, the emptiness at his funeral. And now, whispers of his name clawed from the mouth of a dying prisoner. She almost stumbled, but she forced her body steady. A soldier doesn't falter. The squad reached another chamber, this one different, cleaner. Not cells, not labs, an office maybe, desks overturned, cabinets smashed open, files scattered across the floor, pages soaked by leaking pipes. The commander gestured, "Search it." They fanned out, boots crunching paper. Elena dropped to one knee, hands sifting through documents. Most were water-stained, ink bled into ghosts, but some still legible. Names, dates, photos clipped to pages, faces of the missing. Her breath caught, her fingers trembled. And there, half buried beneath others, a photo she knew by heart. Her brother, 15, dark hair falling into his eyes, a date scrawled beneath. Not the date of his death, but months later, proof he had been here, alive. Her chest split open. She swallowed the cry that rose in her throat. She slipped the photo into her vest, hiding it like a stolen heartbeat. But Cooper's eyes were on her. The kid had seen. He didn't speak, not yet, but the question burned in his gaze. Why are you hiding that? She turned away, forcing her breath steady, forcing her face cold. But inside, her world spun. The commander's voice broke the moment. "We move again in 2. No time to breathe, no time to grieve, only forward, always forward." But as Elena stood, the weight of her secret grew unbearable. It wasn't just hers anymore. The prisoner's whisper, the photo, Cooper's silent witness. The truth was leaking out, piece by piece. And when it finally broke, it would drown them all. Why was she holding back? Why, in the middle of that frozen ridgeline with the stars above and the weight of the mission pulling her down, did she hesitate? The others thought it was just fatigue, just nerves. But it was. It was the truth she carried, clawing its way closer to the surface. A truth she had promised herself she would never speak. The team pushed forward, breath steaming, boots crunching in half-buried gravel. Their packs groaned with gear, rifles slung tight. Each step was calculated, rehearsed in silence. But Lena lagged half a pace behind, her hand brushing the cold steel of her weapon as though reminding herself it was real. The others didn't notice. Or maybe they didn't want to. They had their own demons to drag through the night. Santos, walking point, glanced back once. His eyes met hers for a split second, a warning, a silent "stay with us." Then he turned away. He didn't press further. He knew better than to pry. But inside, Lena was unraveling. The memory of a coded transmission still burned in her head. a fragment of intercepted chatter she hadn't shared in the briefing, words that could rewrite the mission entirely. If she told them now, they'd question her. They'd question everything. And maybe she was afraid of the answer they'd give. She drew in a breath. The mountain air cut sharp, icy. For a moment she thought of her father again, his voice in the dim kitchen light bent over old maps he never explained, his cryptic warnings, his insistence that truth was heavier than lead. He had carried secrets too, and in the end it had broken him. Lena swore she wouldn't let it break her, but here she was. A sudden sound snapped her back, the distant crack of a branch, too deliberate to be the wind. Every head froze, their bodies stilled as if they'd rehearsed this pause 1,000 times. Eyes darted, ears strained. Silence swallowed them whole. Santos raised a hand signaling halt. The team dropped low, weapons ready. Lena's pulse raced in her ears, drumming like a warning. For a long, breathless moment, the night pressed in, unforgiving. Then nothing, just the endless moan of wind through rocks. "Could have been nothing," whispered Cale, his voice low enough it was almost thought. But Santos didn't look convinced. He stayed crouched, scanning, until finally he moved again, motioning them forward. Tension lingered like smoke. Lena followed, but her thoughts pulled elsewhere. The voice on the transmission. "They're not who they think they are. They're not who you think they are." She had played the words again and again in her mind, and each time her chest tightened. What if the mission wasn't about the target? What if the real threat was inside their own perimeter? She shook it off. Not now, not yet. Hours bled into one another as they moved through the high pass. The moon dipped low, shadows stretched long. When they finally stopped, it was Santos who called it. A shallow rock overhang, just enough to shield them from the biting wind. They set down packs in silence. No fire, no unnecessary light, just the rhythm of tired soldiers making a nest in the dark. Cale muttered something about his daughter's birthday, how he missed it every year. His laugh was hollow, but he smiled anyway, staring at the ground. No one answered. They didn't need to. The truth was, they all carried someone they were missing tonight. Lena sat apart, back against the stone, rifle across her knees. She let her eyes close for just a moment. The mountain breathed around her, distant and vast, but sleep wouldn't come, not with the words in her head, not with the weight in her chest. Her hand drifted to the inside pocket of her jacket. The folded paper was still there. The transcript she'd copied by hand, the only proof she hadn't imagined it. She didn't take it out. She didn't dare. Just feeling it, there was enough. One last mission, one last chance. She repeated it like a prayer. But the truth she carried, if she let it out, it could cost her everything. So she stayed silent, and in that silence her resolve hardened, even as doubt gnawed deeper. Morning would bring answers, or ruin, she couldn't tell which. And as she finally drifted into restless sleep, one thought echoed louder than the rest. They're not who you think they are. Why did the valley feel wrong? The air was the same bitter cold, the same thin mountain oxygen scratching her lungs, but Lena's skin prickled like 1,000 unseen eyes were watching. She slowed without meaning to, boots sinking into frost-coated earth, until the man in front of her hissed, "Keep moving." But she couldn't shake it. Something here didn't fit. The valley was too quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. No whisper through the jagged rocks, no scrape of gravel shifting down a slope, just silence. A silence that pressed harder than gunfire ever could. She scanned the ridgelines. Jagged teeth of stone framed the sky, and for an instant she thought she saw movement, a ripple where shadows shouldn't bend. She blinked. Nothing. Santos raised a fist. The column froze. Every soldier crouched instinctively, their breaths fogging in pale clouds. Lena gripped her rifle tighter, feeling the slickness of sweat on her palm despite the cold. Santos motioned with 2 fingers and Cale broke off to sweep the flank. His figure vanished into the rocks, then reappeared, shaking his head. Clear. But Lena's chest stayed tight. She remembered the words again, the voice from that intercepted chatter. They're not who you think they are. Her hand brushed the folded paper in her pocket. She could tell them now. She could explain why this valley felt like a trap, why the silence seemed staged. But the thought of their faces, disbelief, suspicion, stopped her. If she spoke too soon, she risked losing them before the truth had a chance to show itself. So she swallowed it. The team pushed forward slower now. Each step echoed in her skull. Her heartbeat grew louder with every meter. Half an hour passed before it happened. A sound, faint but deliberate, the metallic click of a safety disengaging. Then the world erupted. Gunfire ripped from the ridges, cutting the silence into ribbons. Tracers screamed overhead, sparks bursting from stone. The squad dropped low, shouting over the storm. "Contact right," Kale's voice cut through the chaos. Lena pressed against a rock, returning fire in sharp, controlled bursts. Her ears rang. The valley glowed in flashes of muzzle fire. She saw shapes darting along the ridge, too many, too fast. It wasn't random, it wasn't a skirmish. This was an ambush laid with precision. And in the madness, one detail struck her colder than the mountain air. Their attackers weren't strangers. Their uniforms were wrong, but their movements, their discipline, Lena had seen it before. Her stomach twisted. The voice had been right. They're not who you think they are. Santos barked orders, dragging them into tighter cover. They shifted, returning fire in a deadly rhythm, each man and woman moving like parts of the same machine. But it wasn't enough. They were boxed in, funneled by terrain. Whoever planned this had studied them, anticipated every move. Lena's pulse hammered. She had known. She had known something was coming, and she'd said nothing. A grenade arced overhead, landing too close. The blast shook the ground, showering them with dirt and shrapnel. Lena's ears filled with a high-pitched whine, but she forced her rifle up, eyes burning. Through the haze, she spotted one of the attackers exposed for a split second. She fired, precise, steady. The figure dropped, and in that instant the mask shifted just enough for her to see the face beneath. Her breath stopped. It wasn't the enemy they'd been told to hunt. It was one of their own. Not from their unit, but from their side. The same flag, the same training. Her rifle trembled in her hands. She wanted to scream, to demand an answer that would never come, but the fight swallowed her voice. The ambush pressed harder, rounds slamming against stone, inches from her head. Santos cursed, blood seeping down his arm. Kale fired blind over cover, teeth clenched in fury. Lena's mind raced. If she told them now, mid-firefight, would it even matter? Would they believe her when bullets already proved the truth? Another grenade, another blast. The team was being shredded, their cover shrinking. They wouldn't last like this. And still, she hadn't said it. Her throat tightened. Guilt burned hotter than fear. She could have warned them, could have made them ready. Instead, she'd held it in, thinking she could carry it alone. Now the weight was crushing them all. A lull in the gunfire, seconds, no more. She sucked in air like it was her last breath. Her decision hit like a hammer. "Listen," she shouted over the chaos. "They're not hostiles, they're ours." The words cut sharper than any bullet. Kale turned, stunned. Santos's eyes locked on hers, disbelief etched deep. But there was no time for questions. The enemy, no, the traitors surged again. Her truth was out. Too late or just in time, she couldn't tell. All she knew was this: the mission had changed. The enemy wasn't across the valley. The enemy was behind their own walls. And as the next wave of fire rained down, Lena realized something else. The truth she carried might not just cost her everything. It might cost them all. Why didn't anyone answer her? The words hung in the smoke, raw, jagged, louder than the gunfire that swallowed them. "They're ours." She had screamed it into the valley, thrown it like a flare into the dark. But instead of clarity, it brought silence, doubt, and in the eyes of her brothers in arms, a question she had dreaded more than any bullet: whose side are you on? Santos didn't speak. He just stared at her, his rifle braced, his jaw locked. His silence weighed more than his wound, more than the blood slicking his sleeve. Cale's face twisted, fury and disbelief colliding in the firelight. "What the hell are you talking about?" he spat, eyes wide. His voice cracked between rage and fear. Lena wanted to answer, to explain, to pull the folded paper from her pocket, shove it into their hands, scream that she hadn't imagined it, that the ambush wasn't by chance, that the betrayal wasn't hers but someone else. But the sky erupted again, and the choice was ripped away. Tracer fire carved the air. Rocks shattered above their heads. The team hit the ground, instinct kicking harder than trust. The fight swallowed their doubt for the moment, but Lena felt it. The fracture. The invisible crack splitting the squad in two, those still holding the line and those now glancing sideways at her, wondering if she'd sold them out. Her lungs burned. Her hands shook, but her aim stayed steady. Years of training didn't falter even as her heart screamed. She dropped another figure on the ridge. The mask slipped in the fall, another familiar face. Not the enemy. Never the enemy they were told to expect. The ground shook. A blast ripped open the side of the slope, showering them with shards of rock. Santos yelled something, orders drowned in thunder. Cale dragged a rookie, Jarrow, back into cover, blood streaking down the kid's forehead. Jarrow's voice cracked. "Why us? Why here?" Lena wanted to tell him the truth. That someone had decided they were expendable. That the mission wasn't about targets or strategy, but silence, theirs. But she stayed quiet, for now. The firefight dragged like a storm with no end. Minutes stretched into lifetimes. Finally, the barrage faltered, thinning into scattered shots. Smoke curled above the ridges. Whoever was up there had pulled back, regrouping. The squad sat in the wreckage of their cover, panting, coughing, bleeding. The silence afterward was worse than the chaos. Santos broke it first, his voice low, hoarse. "Explain." It wasn't a request. Every eye turned on Lena. Her throat closed. She felt the folded paper burning against her chest like a brand. "They knew we'd be here," she said finally, her voice brittle. "This wasn't random. I intercepted comms before we deployed, chatter from inside." Her words stumbled over themselves. "They're not insurgents, they're our own. Units reflagged, retasked, sent to erase us." The words landed heavy, like rounds punching into flesh. Cale's eyes flared. "You knew, and you didn't tell us." His voice cracked loud, carrying more pain than anger. "You kept that while we walked into this." Her chest ached. "If I told you in the briefing, would you have believed me?" "Maybe not," Cale snapped, "but we'd have been ready." The rookie Jarrow trembled, his hands shaking as he pressed gauze to his wound. His voice was small, a child's voice lost in a soldier's uniform. "They're supposed to be on our side. Why would they?" No one answered, because the truth was too big, too sharp to say out loud. Santos didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just studied her, searching her face for something she couldn't give a proof. Finally he spoke. "Show me." Her hand moved slowly. She pulled the folded paper from her jacket, the ink smudged, the creases deep. She handed it to him without words. He read it once, twice. His jaw worked, but he said nothing, just passed it back, his face carved from stone. The squad sat in silence, the weight of betrayal heavier than the mountain pressing down on them. Finally Santos looked at her again. His voice was low, but it carried. "From this point on, no one moves alone. Not me, not you. If this is true, then we're ghosts already, and ghosts don't survive divided." The words steadied them just enough. The team reloaded in silence, patched wounds, shifted packs, but the air between them was changed, fragile, splintered. As they moved again, Lena felt the stares linger, Cale's suspicion, Jarrow's confusion, even Santos's silence. She wasn't sure which hurt worse. But deeper still, beneath the mistrust and the gunpowder smoke, a darker question clawed at her. If their own had been sent to erase them, then who had ordered it? And why? The truth she carried wasn't finished yet. It was only beginning to unravel. And she knew, in the marrow of her bones, that the cost of speaking it fully would be more than betrayal. It would be blood. What did survival even mean now? Hours after the ambush, the question gnawed at Lena as the squad limped through a canyon carved by centuries of wind and water. Their boots scraped stone. Their breaths came ragged, some wheezing, some muffled by blood-soaked bandages. The silence between them wasn't the silence of stealth anymore. It was the silence of fracture, of trust cracked down the middle. Her revelation still echoed. Cale hadn't spoken since. Jarrow's wide eyes clung to her every movement, suspicion wrapped in fear. Santos kept the column moving, but the wound on his arm had stiffened. His steps faltered now and then, though he forced them steady. A leader never showed weakness, not if he could help it. The canyon narrowed, walls pressing close. Shadows deepened. Lena's pulse thrummed harder. She didn't trust shadows anymore. Not after the ridgeline, not after the faces behind the masks. She replayed it again. The muzzle flashed, the figure dropping, the mask shifting. That brief, undeniable glimpse, their own flag, their own brothers, erasing them. Her father's words surfaced again, ghosts whispered through memory. Truth is heavier than lead, Lena. Carry it wrong, it'll kill you before the bullet does. She hadn't understood as a child. Now every step proved him right. A faint clatter ahead, stone dislodged, rolling down. The squad froze. Weapons rose. Breath stopped. Figures appeared at the canyon's mouth. Not insurgents, not strangers. She saw the cut of their uniforms, the way their rifles slung at exact, regulation angles. Her throat tightened. It was them, the ones who weren't supposed to be here. No one fired, not yet. The canyon held its breath. Two squads mirrored, faces half hidden in shadow, rifles steady, waiting for the first mistake. Santos's voice, low and steady. Identify yourselves. No answer. The leader of the other squad stepped forward, helmet visor glinting. For a long moment, nothing but the scrape of boots. Then his voice, clear, cutting. Stand down, orders changed. Mission compromised, you're to be extracted. But Lena's chest went cold. She knew that tone, too smooth, too rehearsed. Extraction didn't come wrapped in barrels pointed at your chest. Cale muttered under his breath, "This is wrong." She glanced at Santos. His jaw clenched. He didn't lower his rifle. The leader spoke again, firmer. "Lay down weapons now." Jarrow's breathing cracked into panic. What do we do? Lena's mind raced. If they obeyed, they'd vanish. Quietly, efficiently. Another lost squad in the endless mountain fog. If they fought, the canyon would swallow them in blood. Her fingers tightened on her rifle. She could almost feel her father's hand steadying hers, whispering what he'd always told her. Truth isn't safe, Lena. It never was meant to be. She whispered, almost to herself, we're not supposed to leave alive. Cale turned to her, eyes burning. So what now? Santos's voice cut through, heavy with decision. Now we choose how we go. The canyon erupted. Gunfire thundered between the walls, ricochets sparking like lightning. The air filled with screams, with the stink of cordite, with the metallic taste of survival fought tooth and nail. Lena moved without thought, covering Jarrow as he stumbled. She fired in controlled bursts, each shot carving back seconds of life for the squad. A round tore her shoulder, hot pain ripping through muscle, but she forced herself upright. The enemy pressed harder. These weren't amateurs. These were trained, disciplined. Brothers turned executioners. Every face Lena glimpsed was a mirror of her own side, twisted by silence and orders she would never understand. She dropped one, then another. Each fall was a knife in her chest. She wasn't killing the enemy. She was killing the truth, the system that had sent them all here. Santos went down hard, blood soaking his chest. He gasped, dragging her close. His voice rattled. You keep them alive, do you hear me? You don't stop, you carry it. His hand gripped hers until it slipped. Something broke inside her then. The woman who had hesitated at the ridgeline was gone. The one who rose in the canyon wasn't hesitating anymore. She screamed, not words, just sound, and charged forward, covering the squad with fire that burned through her veins like rage itself. Kale's voice shouted somewhere behind, dragging Jarrow back, forcing retreat. The fight blurred, blood smoke echoes, then a silence deeper than death. When the dust settled, half the canyon lay in ruin. Kale was limping, dragging Jarrow with one arm. Lena stood at the center, rifle empty, chest heaving, blood soaking her uniform. Around her, bodies of men who should have been brothers. No cheers, no victory, just the unbearable weight of survival. Kale's voice was raw. "They'll come again, you know that, right?" She nodded barely. The truth wasn't gone. It was still here inside her, burning like a wound that would never heal. Jarrow stared at her wide-eyed, his voice breaking. "Why us?" She didn't answer. Because some truths didn't save you. They just kept you alive long enough to carry them further. The three of them limped out of the canyon, shadows stretching long in the fading light. Every step Lena felt the ghosts trailing them. Santos, the others, the faces behind the masks. Night fell heavy. Stars cut sharp above. And in the silence her father's words returned, no longer whisper but thunder. Truth is heavier than lead. She carried it now, not in paper, not in ink, in blood. When dawn broke, only 3 figures walked out of the mountains. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes that's all that remains.